the wizard died first, eyes bulging, blood frothing through clenched teeth as he scrabbled pitifully at the poisoned dart lodged in his neck. His apprentice watched it happen, a phoenix feather held limply in numb fingers, his mouth moving soundlessly as he tried to recall the incantation that might save his master's life. The barbarian was next. After cutting a bloody swathe through a room of burly orcs, it was a dagger in the dark that snuffed out his life. A lowly goblin with a cruel thin blade, just long enough to slide into the barbarian's ear and puncture the only muscle the gargantuan oaf had never been inclined to develop, his brain. At that point, they should have turned back, but the elf and the dwarf had been paid well, and at their backs were 40 of the Count's finest swordsmen, including a decorated sergeant whose skill with a blade seemed only matched by his bravery. And so they pushed onwards, ever onwards, into the darkness of the dungeon. Through level after level of treacherous corridors and dank rooms lit only by guttering torches. Through a maze of cold stone where every corner hid a new threat and every doorway was a yawning portal into another desperate battle with the green-skinned hordes. So it was they eventually found the cells where the Altdorf nobles were being held, or at least what was left of them. The elf's keen eyes were first to pick out the pile of gristle and bone, thick with a teeming mass of black-furred rats that worried on the grisly remains, but the dwarf had grown accustomed to the smell of death many years ago, and he knew all too well what lay ahead. They understood then their mission was already a failure, but that failure was not complete until the mighty armoured Chaos Warriors had emerged from the gloom, their thick plate armour clanking and shimmering in the oily light of the torches, the curved blades of their battle axes appearing like ugly smirks, cutting the darkness into metallic tatters. The elf's arrows were no use against their armour, and his keen eyes were dimmed once his pretty head was taken from his shoulders. The Count's swordsman did no better. So the dwarf fled, dragging the apprentice with him. The sergeant would have stayed and died with his men, but among the shattered bodies of the Altdorf nobles he had found the emblem of the Count's beloved nephew. It was worth more than a kingdom, and he refused to entrust it to a dwarf who ran faster than the length of his legs might otherwise suggest. And so the three of them retreated together, desperately attempting to retrace their steps. Their mapmaker was dead, lost to the Chaos Warriors' gruesome work, and every damn corridor looked the same. But they had no choice but to run. By the dwarf's reckoning, they were 3 levels below the surface. All they had to do was find 3 staircases, and they would be free of this place. Just 3 staircases. Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Today we are playing a one-shot dungeon delve for Advanced Heroquest. In my previous video I created a party of adventurers. I created a dwarf hero and then I picked 2 companions to go with him into the dungeon. If you haven't seen that video, you may want to check that one out first because we are going to get straight into the game here. I have set up the starting area of the dungeon. Every dungeon in Advanced Heroquest starts the same way. You have a staircase, 2 corridors and then a T-junction. And as you heard at the start there, our dwarf has had a bad day. His companions have been brutally murdered, he is alone apart from his 2 henchmen, a wizard's apprentice and a sergeant, and they just need to get out of here. They have no map, everywhere looks the same, so they need to explore the dungeon and find a way out. They are currently on the 3rd level. Each time they find a quest room, they will find a staircase leading up to the next level. If they make it all the way to the top, they escape. If they die or they are forced to go back down to the previous level, they lose. This could be a very short mission, it could go on for quite some time. That is the nature of this game. And I'm not going to front load this video with lots of rules explanations, I have done that in a separate video already. We're just going to play, I will explain as we go along. First of all, we begin the game in an exploration turn, that is because there are no monsters on the board. In an exploration phase, heroes and henchmen have a move of 12 squares. But only our hero is allowed to explore, only our hero can reveal new areas of the map, only our hero can open treasure chests or doors. The henchmen are just there for the muscle. So first our dwarf will move down to the T-junction so we can see what lies ahead. And of course his henchmen will follow him. That completes the hero phase for now, so we go on to the exploration phase. Because we are standing at a T-junction, we have to reveal 2 new areas of the map. First we will reveal the stuff to the left, and then to the right. Everything is generated using tables and dice rolls, so let's get started. That's an 8, that is 2 sections of corridor to the left. We now roll 2d12 to see what is in the corridor. That's an 8, there is nothing there. And finally we roll to see what is at the end of the corridor. 16 is a left turn. We now repeat the process for the right hand turn. 1 is a single corridor section. Now we roll for contents. And that's a 20. We have found 2 doors. The way this normally works, the heroes will decide which section of the corridor will contain doors and on which side of the corridor those doors will be placed, and then the Games Master picks the specific location. We are going to place them like that. I like to set the doors off to the side of the corridor sections, just so they don't fall over and they don't get in the way of the miniatures moving around. Finally, we get to see what the end of the corridor looks like. And a 4 is a dead end. So we swap out our corridor tile for a tile that ends in a rock fall. And that is the end of our exploration phase. We did not find any monsters, so that means we go to the Games Master phase. Normally, the Games Master would roll a dice. On a 1 or a 12, they would get to take a dungeon counter. However, we are playing the solo rules, so there is a little Games Master table we roll against to see if there are any random occurrences. And that's an 11, nothing happens. That is a lucky break though. If we had rolled a 12, some wandering monsters would have shown up. We now have 2 doors to explore. Only the dwarf can open the doors. The henchmen are refusing to do so. So the dwarf will move into a position to open the door, and then the henchmen will rearrange themselves to form a rear guard. Like so. Doors are not opened in the hero phase, they are opened in the exploration phase. So let's see what lies beyond this door. Here's a loading screen for fans of the Resident Evil video games. We'll put that door back on the board in a moment. First of all, we have to roll to see what we have found. When you open a door in a corridor, it will always lead into a room of some kind. That's a 4, it's a normal room. So there is our normal room. Next we roll to see if there are any doors. And we rolled an 11, that means there will be 2 doors out. We will place them like that. These small normal rooms are normally empty, but for fun I have decided that whenever we find a normal empty room, we will roll to see if there is any furniture in there. We've rolled a 3, no furniture in here. That completes the exploration phase, so once again the Games Master rolls to see if there are any unexpected events. We roll a 10, still nothing. I guess we press on. It should be noted, normally in a room you are allowed to search for treasure. In the solo rules for the game, you are not allowed to search for treasure. So I guess we're going to go south and check out the door there. So our dwarf moves down and then his companions will follow. And it's time for another exploration phase. When you open a door from a room, you have to roll a d12. On an even number, you will find a passageway. On an odd number, you will find another room. That's an odd number, so we have found another room. Please don't break, please don't break, please don't break, please don't break. What kind of room have we found? It's a 3. That is another normal room. And now we roll for doors. A 5, there is 1 door. And just for the fun of it, we roll for furniture. That's a 10. We have found a fireplace which has no purpose in exploration turns, but in a combat situation you can take a flaming brand from the fire and use it to whack the monsters. We will put that there. What a cozy little room we have found. Once again, we have to roll for the Games Master. And it's a 9, so still nothing happens. We have a few different doors to explore. We also have another corridor we can explore off to the left. Let's just keep going through doors for now. We're going to go through the door on the right. The dwarf moves to there. Now remember, the henchmen are not allowed to open doors. They can only protect the dwarf. I wonder what we will find. Ultimate toy factor. Remember, an even number will reveal a corridor, an odd number will reveal another room. And it's an even number, so we have found a corridor. We roll to see how many corridor sections we have found. 11. That is a corridor 3 sections long. One of those sections has to be touching the wall of the room we are in. The other 2 sections can go to the left or the right as we choose. So let's do this. I like the idea that the cave-in had blocked off a T-junction. Next we roll for the contents of the corridor. A 14 is nothing. However, we do have to generate 2 endings to the corridor, one to the top, one to the bottom. We will roll for the top first. 14 is a T-junction. And to the south. That's a left turn. Once again, that completes the exploration phase, so we roll for the Games Master. And it's an 8, still nothing. The dwarf is going to go north because there's a T-junction there. That will reveal 2 different corridors, twice as much chance of finding something interesting like doors that will lead out of here. Our dwarf and his companions have arrived at a T-junction. We need to reveal 2 new corridors. First we roll for the corridor on the left. It's a 3, which means 2 sections. Then we roll for contents. And that's a 14, which is nothing. And then we roll for the end of the corridor, which is a 9. That's a right turn. Now we roll for the corridor on the right. A 5 is 2 sections. Now you will notice that because of the way the dungeon has been generated, there is a door that now cannot possibly lead to a room. That door is considered to be a false door and is removed from play. Maybe there was a little storage room or something in there at one point, but the monsters have filled it in. Maybe it collapsed when the cave-in happened in the passageway outside. Next we roll for corridor contents. It's a 16. That's 1 door, which we're going to place right there. And then we roll for the end of the corridor. 15. A 15 is a left turn. As you can see, we cannot do a left turn in this corridor because there would be nowhere for that corridor to lead to. It would run into the corridors we've already placed. In this situation, we're allowed to replace the junction with one that doesn't lead into a wall, so we're going to switch it for a right-hand junction. Having generated everything, we roll for the Games Master. And it's a 10, still nothing. So let's move up to that door and see what lies beyond. We move into position. Every time I do this, I am risking breaking one of these doors. They are so fragile. Let's roll for the room type. It's an 11. First, we place our quest room. Quest rooms always contain a treasure chest. I like to pop them in the corner right out of the way. And, as is specific to this quest that we are on, there will be a stairway up to the next level. And now we roll to see what kind of monster we get. It's an 8, that is 2 femurs. Here is one of our femurs, screaming, "Get off my lawn." Now the way that the solo rules work, it says that the first model you place has to be in a position where it can attack a hero, and that means putting it in front of the doorway, and then all of the other monsters are placed adjacent to that first monster. I don't really like that because it means all of the fighting happens around doorways, so I'm going to place my femurs in a more narrative manner. One is standing guard, the other one is having a rummage through the treasure chest to see what there is in there. We now roll for surprise. First the heroes. They roll a 6. And then the monsters. 5. Because the heroes won the surprise roll, they get to move each of the femurs 1 space. We will move them both closer towards us. Additionally, because we won that surprise roll, we will also get to activate first in the combat round. My characters can move in any order, but they are not allowed to move through a space containing another model, even if that model is one of our allies, so the dwarf has to go first because otherwise no one else can get into the room. And yes, there is a logic in Advanced Heroquest that dictates staying in doorways is the best way to survive because you minimise the number of incoming attacks, but I do prefer to dive into the rooms and try to get as many attacks on the monsters as possible as soon as possible. Sleepy will activate. He has a combat speed of 6. So we are going to move Sleepy to there. A few things to remember about movement: you cannot move diagonally, and most enemies exert a death zone on the 4 orthogonally adjacent locations. So moving my dwarf to there, I have used my maximum move value of 6, but I am not in any death zones. That also means that no monsters are in my death zone either, and I cannot make a hand-to-hand combat attack. However, I do have a throwing dagger in my possession, and I am going to throw that at the femur closest to the treasure chest. I'm hoping I can injure him, so the sergeant can then come in and finish him off. When you are working out the range of the attack, you do not measure diagonally, it measures the same way as movement, which means our target is 4 squares away from us. And that means throwing my dagger, I require a 7 or more to hit. And that's an 11, almost a critical hit. So my dagger has hit. I now get to roll to wound. A thrown dagger has 2 damage dice. A femur's toughness is 7, so each roll of a 7 or more will inflict 1 wound. That's a 5 and an 8, so I have inflicted a single wound on the femur. He has 3 wounds remaining. Next, I'm going to move my henchman. He moves to there. He has a weapon skill of 8 compared to the femur's weapon skill of 6. So if we look at this chart, we can see if we roll a 5 or more on a d12, we have hit. And it's a 6. We hit, but only just. Our sergeant is super strong and rolls 4 damage dice when hitting. So we roll 4 dice, and any that are 7 or more will be a wound. And we have rolled a 7, a 9, a 10, and an 11. That is 4 wounds. That sergeant has just pummeled that femur. And in fact, pummeled it to such a degree that it didn't matter whether or not we had wounded it with that dagger first. That single strike would have killed it. The sergeant is already showing his quality. We still have the wizard's apprentice, and we may as well move him into the room, so we'll just go there. It is now the monster's turn to activate. The solo rules have a table that you roll against, and it will determine whether you get reinforcements, whether the monsters move and attack or then attack and move. I don't think it's necessary to have tables like that when you are playing a game like this solo. You just play the monsters to the best of your ability and try to take down the heroes. The only thing I will do is I will roll to see if I get any reinforcements. So I roll a d12, on a 1 I will generate reinforcements, otherwise I'm just going to move the monsters to the best of my abilities. And we've rolled a 12. So the femur does not get any reinforcements, he has to deal with these pesky heroes all by himself. Let's move and see if we can make Sleepy live up to his name. The femur has a weapon skill of 6, Sleepy has a weapon skill of 7. That means the femur needs to roll an 8 or more. Unfortunately, femurs get 2 attacks, so he will get 2 swings at this. First attack. It's a miss. Second attack. It's a hit, not only a hit, a critical hit. Which means we get to roll again and see if we can hit him again. Oh my gosh. That's another critical. So that means we have hit him and we get another free attack. So we're up to 2 hits so far. And that's 3. Nearly another critical hit. That is 3 hits. Because those triggered off of the femur's second regular attack, each of those attacks rolls 2 damage dice. And any rolls of a 9 or more will inflict a wound on the dwarf. So, let's roll for these attacks in turn. First one. That's 1 wound. Second one. That's nothing. Third one. That's another wound. Our dwarf has been reduced to 2 wounds. Now remember, my hero does have fate points. A fate point can be used to negate all of the damage from one source. But it does specify that you would negate the damage from an attack, not all of the attacks that you have received in any given turn. So at most, using a fate point would save me from 1 of those wounds, so I may as well soak them both for now, and then I can always use my fate points a little further down the line if I get whacked by something really badly. It is now time for my heroes to activate again. First of all, we will attack the femur with our dwarf. We're going to use our axe for this attack, and the femur has a weapon skill of 6, which means a 6 or more will hit. And that is a critical hit. These dice are incredible. They are rolling 12s for days. Of course, that critical hit means I get a bonus attack, which I roll now. And that's a 7, so that is also a hit. For each of those hits, I am rolling 2 damage dice. And remember, the femur has a toughness of 7, so a 7 or more will be a wound. That's 1 wound on the first hit, and another wound on the second hit. 2 wounds total, the femur has 2 wounds left. My dwarf does have a movement, and even though when you move into a death zone you have to stop, there is nothing stopping you from moving out of a death zone on subsequent turns, so my dwarf is free to move backwards away from the femur. We will go over there and bravely guard the treasure chest, while our sergeant goes and has a word with that femur. Sergeant needs a 5 or more. And gets a 6, so that is a hit, and he rolls 4 damage dice with this attack. He rolled double 1s there, but he also rolled 2 7s. 7s are just enough to wound the femur, who has a toughness of 7, so that is 2 wounds total. Added to the 2 wounds that Sleepy caused, we have killed the femur. And that is it, we have survived our first combat encounter. I don't need to worry about moving the wizard's apprentice at this point, so we can go straight to the end phase. In the end phase, we can loot the femurs we have murdered, and each femur has 70 gold coins, so that's 140 gold coins, not a bad haul. Furthermore, Sleepy gets to roll to see if he recovers his dagger. He rolls a d12, on a 7 or more he recovers the dagger successfully. And he rolls a 6, so unfortunately that dagger is lost. We now go back into the exploration phase. And Sleepy is of course going to open the treasure chest. We roll a d12. It's a 4. We have found 2 flasks of Greek fire. Those are pretty useful in certain hazardous rooms. And then my allies will form square with me, like so. We roll for the Games Master. And we have rolled a 1, that means we have activated a trap. Obviously that treasure chest had some kind of delayed mechanism in it. We have to randomise one of our characters to suffer the consequences of the trap. So 1 to 4 will be Sleepy, 5 to 8 will be the Sergeant, and then anything else will be the Wizard. It is the Sergeant, so now we roll on the trap table. It's a 6. Oh no, our Sergeant has stepped in a man trap. He has a chance to spot it. He needs to roll a 7 or more. And he rolls a 5. He doesn't spot it. He steps in the man trap. We have to roll 4 damage dice. Our Sergeant has a toughness of 10. And we have rolled a 1, a 4 and a 6 and a 12. So only 1 wound. Unfortunately, 1 wound could well be bad enough. The man trap snaps on our Sergeant's leg. It causes 1 wound. Additionally, it severs his limb. The Sergeant immediately loses half of their speed value, rounding up. They may only move 8 squares in exploration phases, and they may no longer use a shield, and they may not use 2-handed weapons. Our Sergeant was using a shield, so he will have to discard that and his toughness will go down to 9. This is a disaster. So all told, he has lost a point of toughness, he has lost 1 wound, and his speed has been reduced to just 3 in combat turns and 8 in exploration turns. This is horrific. Hey everybody, it's future me. When you are making a video like this, you have to think about a lot of things. You have to make sure you're getting the right shots, make sure you're narrating everything clearly, and also trying to make it entertaining. As a result, sometimes things get overlooked. For example, at this point, I overlooked the fact that my Sergeant had a fate point. He could have spent that fate point to avoid all of the damage from this man trap. He would have saved his leg. Unfortunately, I forgot. I didn't spend the fate point, and the Sergeant has to deal with the consequences. Never mind, it's more entertaining this way. But having dealt with all that, we begin a new exploration phase, and we are going to ascend our first staircase. We are going to the 2nd level of the dungeon.